Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be part 3 and the final part of our workshop in which we create a full female character concept. In the previous part, we started off with a thumbnail that we created in part 1, and then we brought that thumbnail to more of a finished concept. Still black and white, no colors, but to a state where we can pretty much call it done, almost. Now all that's left is to apply some colors, tweak the final details here and there, based on what the color composition is going to give us, and we're going to be done with this. So what I'm starting off with here, I am applying a base coat on my model. I'm not sure yet what the color is going to be, what the color palette is going to be. I'm figuring that out as I go. But this is the kind of stuff that I need to set in stone as soon as possible. What I do know is that I always have one very saturated color that is going to occupy somewhere around like 40% of my concept, from 30 to 40% of my concept, and then 2 or 3 other secondary colors that are going to be maybe the other 30%, but all of them combined. So the saturated the main saturated color is going to occupy the most space on my drawing. And what I normally do with the secondary colors is I have them be sort of on the opposite side in the chromatic circle, and a lot more just saturated than the main color. And this always gives a really, by default, a really good combination of colors. And now that I'm pretty much settled with my color palette, so we're going to go with the orange. And as you can see, the opposite color of the red is orange/red is blue and green, and I have both these colors on the rest of my characters. So some parts a little bit more grayish they look, but that's because there's more blue in it, and the other parts are more a little bit greenish, and that's a really good combination. It's pretty much like textbook combination, and then some whites to go with that orange. Always nice. So nothing out of my comfort zone here. Pretty safe colors, I should say. And the next step is going to be to finalize, now that we have our colors all set in stone, and that's not going to change. Maybe some minor details here and there, color-wise, but for like decals and the triangles that are throughout the characters, those are going to be done a little bit later. But that's not going to change that's not going to change the composition of the image. Now it's pretty much done. And now that I have that, what I can do and what this allows me is to finalize the concept completely. So there were a couple things, like as you can see now that I'm tweaking the shapes, I'm adding some lines here and there, because sure, black and white is gonna get me far enough, but there's never you can never imagine what it's gonna look like once the color sort of separates all the different shapes, and that's really unpredictable, and which is why there is always the need to further tweak the concept a little bit more after that, and that's what I'm doing right now. What's really important for this concept, especially since this is the only thing I'm going to give to the 3D artist if I were in a production environment. So it would be, well, actually it's not only this, it would be this 3/4 view, and then the same 3/4 view but from the back. So there would be no orthographic, so no side view, no front view, nothing like that. Only 2 different angles, one like this and one from the back. And what this means is that I have to really think about my shapes and how they work in the actual 3D space, because this is gonna have to be translated to 3D, and if it's not accurate, it's never gonna be 100% accurate. That's a given. But if it's like really far from being accurate, then it's just not gonna work in 3D, and then it's gonna be your 3D art is going to be raging, and that's never good. So we want to spend as much time here to define the shapes in 3D for our concept, so that there is no headaches when it comes to time to translate it in 3D. And it's always better, since there won't be any deviation for the concept from the concept if the concept is tight. The reason why we're not doing autographics here is because it's, if anything, is just insulting to the 3D artist. What I'm doing by not doing those and giving, if anything, a little bit more freedom to the artist is believing in him, believing in his skills, that he is going to take this, and if something is not perfect in 2D, he's going to make it better in 3D. And that's always been the best way to work, at least in my experience, as opposed to not trusting the artist and giving them perfect blueprints. Another thing to keep in mind is that we want the lighting to be as neutral as possible. So we don't want any kind of light coming from the bottom and or from the back only, or anything like that, where it could sort of distort our shapes. We want something, a really ambient lighting, something that comes kind of like from the front and from the top, where it'll define our shapes really, really well, so that they're, again, easily translated to 3D. Just like the rest of my illustrations, always think about lighting as being 3 light sources. So the main light source coming from the what would be the sun, so sort of 3/4, hitting the character at 3/4, and then at a 3/4 angle is what I mean, and then one light coming from the top, directly from the top. This light is going to be a little bit more ambient, a lot more subtle, and it's going to give sort of a blue hue to all of the colors, and that's going to be the light coming from the sky, and then some sort of bounce light coming from the direct opposite direction from the main light source. And that light, could be pretty much anything right now. Normally, it's the color of whatever your ground is. You've probably noticed that I'm not using layers as usual. I've been talking about production, and if this was to be handed out to a 3D artist, obviously if that was the case for real, and if I was going to be art directed on this, where I would have to make changes and tweak the colors or whatnot, obviously I would have more layers, where this would allow me to do that more easily. But for this, I'm my own art director, and once I'm done with this, it's gonna be over, and I'm never gonna touch it again. So this is why I'm not using multiple layers. Also, something that you guys didn't see, and that is actually really, really helpful, is to pause the video. Well, not to pause the video, but to stop at this point. And you guys are not gonna see me do it, because I just paused the video and then did it meanwhile, and got back to that directly after. But what I'm talking about is doing the back view of the character somewhere along the way. Not wait until the end, because then you'll have some surprises for sure. It's almost impossible, unless you're a god, to predict exactly how the shapes are going to work when in the back view. So the transition from the front view to the back, those are really, really hard to figure out unless you have the back view already done. So that's what I did here, and that helped me a lot in figuring out what's going on and how to angle my volumes to match what's going on in the back. And right about now is the time to start and define the materials for my character. So I know I'm gonna have metals, I'm gonna have some sort of rubber, some plastics, and this is the kind of information you wanna put in the concept, so that there's no questions asked when the time comes to do the textures on the 3D model. And it also affects the composition a little bit. So I said it was pretty much final now, but there's always this last step that sometimes tilts the balance in a way that's you didn't really expect. So for me here, I have a lot of all the oranges sort of this metallic paint. And then there's not much metal anywhere else. Most of it is plastic and matte finish fabric, so like kind of rubber. And this is not a great balance, so I'm gonna use a more shiny surface on these stickers here to bring back the balance, and then I had some lights here and there to distract from the fact that most of the specular is found on the top of the body. And yeah, that's gonna be pretty much it for this character. She's come a long way. She started off as a thumbnail and then as a grayscale, and now she's in full color, all alive and looking pretty. And yep, at this point she's pretty much ready to pass off to the 3D artist. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm gonna do just the next one more pass here on the lighting to give the background a little bit more darkness and make the character pop a little bit more. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope if anything this was a little bit insightful in my workflow and the kind of stuff I do. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. I will see you guys next time.